Good morning. I am so glad that all of you have decided to tune in today for the May 2020 meeting of Republican Women United. We have a wonderful program planned for you today, and we want to start today's meeting as we do with all of our meetings with a prayer led by Darren Beckham. It will be followed immediately with the flag salute and the reading of our KFRW purposes. If you at home would please join us.
Let us pray. Father God, we come before you today thankful to be Americans, thankful to be involved in our political process. Father, I pray that you would be with our speakers. May they be informative. Thank you for their leadership. We ask that you would bless everyone who tunes in today. Be with us and allow us to be thankful for the moments that we have with our families as we are distancing from so many other things. Give us your grace and see us through this time. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
If you would all stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, Darren. I appreciate it. If you are new to Republican Women United or are not a member, I would encourage you to explore more about the organization. We are an associate of the Kansas Federation of Republican Women, and we are also an affiliate of the National Federation of Republican Women. The boots on the ground, grassroots efforts in Kansas is led by Republican women. Now, I've said Republican women a couple of times, but I want you to know that men are equally welcome in our group. They are our associates, and we depend on them to help us also. So please, if you are a Republican, I would suggest that you come to our meetings, look at our Facebook, and consider becoming a part of our group. Our goal is to recruit, educate, and deploy, and we have several training sessions and education meetings coming up that will help us do exactly that. Our Get Out the Vote training will start in June, and we have a huge Get Out the Vote training program planned for August, and it will include all of the elected officials in Sedgwick County here. The Get Out the Vote training will be statewide, so if you're interested in becoming active in the campaigns, I would suggest that you go to nfrw.org and find a club in Kansas that you can join and participate in their activities. We always begin our meetings with the flag salute and the prayer, but we also read our purposes. I think any organization that does not remind their members what they are there to do and accomplish probably are straying off the line just a little bit. So, our Republican Women United purposes: to increase the effectiveness of women in the cause of good government, to disseminate information to all local clubs, to inform the public through political education and activity, to foster loyalty to the Republican Party at all levels of government, to promote the principles of the Republican Party, to work for Republican candidates in all elections, including nonpartisan elections, to support the objectives and policies of the Republican National Committee, and to perform any lawful activity not inconsistent with the following. So I think we can all agree those are things that we need to be doing. We have some announcements that I want to go through. Did you know that Republican Women United this year, for the first time, is offering a $1,000 scholarship to Republican young women who have graduated from high school this year? Now, I know that your graduation, thank you. I know that your graduation ceremonies and that have been postponed, but we have not forgotten the effort and the work that you have put forward to this. So we are offering a $1,000 scholarship. You do not have to be going to a four-year school. You are more than welcome to apply for this scholarship to use for any higher education, whether it's a trade school, whatever. So all you have to do is look on our either one of our Facebook we have a page and we have a group, or you can email us at republicanwomenunited@cox.net, and we'll be more than happy to get that application to you. By the way, it is a video submission application, so I think you'll like that. June the 13th is our next meeting, and I'm so excited because the rules on how many people can get together in a meeting and that will change, and so we will be able to meet here in this building, Wichita Area Builders Association, 730 North Main. We are going to be limited, though, as I understand it, to 50 people. Our groups are usually larger than that, so I suggest you get here early. Our social time will begin at 9:30, and we will gavel in at 10 o'clock. Why do you want to be here next month for the meeting? Because it will be our Senate forum. We have sent out our invitations, and we are getting our confirmations that our Senate candidates will be here. We have not had the opportunity to hear from these candidates like we usually do, so if you live within my earshot here, you will want to be here for that Senate forum. Like I said, we start at 9:30 for our social hour, but we will close the doors at 10 o'clock, so get here early. We have a few more announcements, and I think Laura Adkins, our second vice president in charge of campaigns and social media, has something to tell us.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to touch base a little bit. I know everyone is stuck at home and we can't do our regular campaign efforts. Knocking on doors and parades have been suspended temporarily, but we can do phone banking. Yesterday we did I-360 phone banking training, and we actually did phone banking for one of our senators here in Sedgwick County. We are also selling signs. Sorry, I had to look at my notes. We are selling signs for $10. You can send us a message on Facebook and let us know if you would like one, and we will make arrangements to either meet you to pick them up, or you can come to our meeting in June to pick one up, and we'll save one for you if you reserve it. But if you're interested in phone banking, please send us an email or send us a message on Facebook so that we can get your information and get you set up with one of our candidates here in Sedgwick County, so you can begin calling from your own home so that we can help get out the vote. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate that, Laura. You do a wonderful job for us. We want to begin the program now, and our first speaker is Tabitha Lehman. Tabitha Lehman, I think all of you appreciate. She probably doesn't get all of the appreciation that she deserves, but she's been our election commissioner for years. She's been in this line of work for a very long time. She knows what she's talking about. She's very precise, and we just appreciate her very much. I know that we get a lot of questions about, are we going to mail in our applications? Are we going to mail in our votes? Am I going to get something in the mail? How do I do it? How are we going to do it with social distancing? Well, here's the expert to give you all that information. Tabitha.
Thank you. I'll start off with, I'm an extrovert, and when I speak, I feed off the crowd, so a camera's not my friend, so, I'll be looking here and the camera. I'll start off with kind of what Alta started with, and that's discussing, we all know that the Democratic Party just had their caucus that they refer to as a primary, and they chose to do it all by mail. And the reason that they could choose to do that all by mail is because the party itself was conducting that election, not election officials, so they did not have to follow Kansas law. Kansas law does not, it's not even just doesn't allow, it actually is illegal in Kansas for my office to mail every person a ballot automatically when a candidate is on the ballot. So we do not have the authority, the election officials do not have the authority under Kansas law to conduct an election all by mail. So the first question out of the way, we cannot legally do that at this time. That would take some change that is far above my head. We have been working on our contingency plans in our office, and we set out goals that any contingency plan that we did needed to accomplish. And there were 3 goals that I really wanted my staff to focus on as we worked on this. And the first one was to provide protection for the voters and the election workers from the spread of COVID-19, but also from disenfranchisement. But we must accomplish that within the confines of the law. The second goal was to protect the integrity of the election and make sure that we produce accurate results that everyone can trust. And then the third one was to accomplish the first two and still be fiscally responsible. So that's kind of how we have been approaching how we're going to conduct this upcoming election cycle. We know that 75% of our election worker pool is in the high-risk category based on their age alone. We have contacted approximately 2,000 current and past election workers, and so far, only 270 have agreed to work the upcoming election. This is slightly more than 30% of the number that we project that we will need for the primary. At this point, normally, we would be at about 80% staffed for the primary. So we're a little bit stressed, but we're not panicking. Don't worry, we don't panic in the election office. We have had multiple polling places contact us and cancel their availability for this year. We are working our way through the rest of our list to see if anyone else is going to cancel and what it will take to keep them from canceling. And we know that it's likely we will have to observe some kind of social distancing at their polling places, and we will need to provide PPE for our election workers and sanitation processes for both the voting equipment and the polling places. And we have been working closely with other election offices. I've had the joy, Johnson County has a new election commissioner, Connie Schmidt, and she is a returning election commissioner, and she is actually one of my I hate to say it this way, but honestly, she's one of my idols. I have looked up to her for many years, and it's just absolutely amazing for me to get to actually work with her as a colleague right now. And we've been talking a lot and bouncing ideas off each other, and that's been very helpful, I hope, for both counties. So we've worked hard, and we've come up with our contingency plan. And right now, I mean, we know it's likely to change as we progress. But the first thing we want people to know is that we're committed, in Sedgwick County, we're committed to keeping as many polling places open as we possibly can. And we will do our best to replace the polling places that cancel. And there's multiple reasons for that. One is we don't want to have voters have to travel further to vote, but we also want to make sure that we can social distance within the polling places. So if we have significantly fewer polling places, it will make it harder to social distance. We are planning to increase in-person early voting options. We're not sure exactly what that's going to look like yet, but that is part of our plan. Obviously, we're going to have to increase our poll worker recruitment efforts because our pool is not able to work this year as much as they would in times past. In September, we normally send out a flyer giving people their options of how to vote. We have redesigned that. That's in the printer at the printer's office now, and will go out late May, early June, and we will actually have an absentee ballot application for both the primary and the general election, and that will be sent to all active voters. One of the things that's important to understand under Kansas law is that everyone, unless you have a permanent illness or disability, every voter who casts a ballot has to comply with the government-issued photo ID law, including those who vote by mail. So when you apply for a ballot by mail, unless you have a permanent illness or disability and are in a whole separate category of voters, you have to provide us with an ID number that we can verify with the DMV. We actually, all election officials across the state have the ability to go bounce your ID number that you provide to us to the DMV and make sure that that number belongs to the person who provided it to us. Or if you don't provide us with a Kansas ID number, then you have to provide us a copy of one of the eligible IDs. We also verify the signature on the application and on the ballot envelope itself as well. So we are hopeful that by encouraging people to vote by mail, we will see fewer people to polling places on election day and therefore not see long lines as a result of reduced staffing because of not having enough election workers. And we are also hopeful that that will help us space out the voting machines and practice social distancing. We are working to provide appropriate PPE for our election workers. The Secretary of State's office has placed an order of over $1 million worth of PPE that will be shipped out to the counties. We will likely have to supplement that some, but that's a really great place for us to start. We are also moving as much of our election worker training as we can online to reduce in-person contact. And then, of course, we're working to do the social distancing in our office. And one of the things that I would also just mention is that the Secretary of State's office received close to $5 million from the CARES Act to respond to COVID-19 in the upcoming election cycle. and we found out Thursday that our share in Sedgwick County is $420,000 that we can spend for buying PPE, for sanitizing polling locations, for training our election workers. That's actually about a quarter of my entire budget for the year, so that's a significant amount of money for us. So we are obviously going to put that money to good use to make sure we're protecting the voters and our election workers. So I think that is pretty much what I had, unless anybody has any questions.
We do have a question from one of our followers. They want to know, how do they, I don't know if they missed it or what, but how do they sign up to be an election worker?
Okay.
And they don't know, they've never done it, so
Okay.
they don't know what they're doing.
Okay, so on our website, actually, if you go to sedgwickcounty.org/elections, you'll see a banner at the very top that's red, white, and blue, and I think it's got Uncle Sam pointing at you and saying, "We need you," something like this. It's about being an election worker, so you can just click on that banner. It takes you to a page that actually gives you all of the information about being an election worker and how to apply, and so you can look through all the qualifications that you need to have before doing so. We will take people who will work half days, so if you only want to work half that day, we will need to make sure we find somebody to work the other half, but you can do that as well if you can't take on a whole 16-hour day.
We also have a viewer who wants to know, says, please remind us who can be an election worker and what that work will entail,
Okay.
and are they paid?
They are paid. It is minimal, and I like to remind people it's minimal because we're paying you with your tax dollars. So think of it more of a civic responsibility. But 16 and 17-year-olds can be election workers if they meet the other qualifications. You have to be a United States citizen. You have to be registered to vote in the county where you're going to serve as an election worker. And then different counties kind of have some qualifications. We ask that you make sure you can lift a certain amount of pounds to be able to set up the voting machines, different things like that. But there's not a whole lot of qualifications for it. We just ask that you make sure you're not putting your own health at risk to work.
All right, real good. We have another question. I have a question for Tabitha. There is misinformation being shared on social media that Kansas will be totally mail-in ballot. What's a good answer to dispute that?
It's against Kansas law for us to be all mail-in ballot this fall.
Right. We also have another viewer who wants to know, how are dead people kept off voter rolls? I'm sure they're
that's a
not
good
talking
one.
about actual dead people, but
No. How do they get taken off the rolls
Right.
once they die? Yes. Actually, that's a very good question. Kansas law requires every election official in each county to go through the obituaries and remove anyone from the obituaries. One of the things that has become a little bit more challenging is we're seeing fewer and fewer people actually utilize the obituaries. They tend to put notice out on social media and maybe on a funeral home's website, but not so much in the newspaper, and that makes it a little more challenging. But we also have in Kansas, the Secretary of State's office has set up a program where KDHE, Kansas Department of Health and Environment, we get a list from them once a week electronically of anyone who's registered to vote who has been, a death certificate has been filed for in the state of Kansas. So that helps us stay up to date on removing, and every county in the state receives that, not just Sedgwick County.
okay. We have one more question. I think you addressed it, but since the question just came in, maybe they tuned in a little bit late. Is how do we request a ballot at home?
Yes. So you can go to our website. We have the application there. You can download it and apply. You can also call our office and get it, but also know that we are actually mailing something out to every active voter at the end of May, beginning of June timeframe. So, but you don't have to wait till then. You can go ahead and go to our website or call us and we'll get you that application.
All right, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
No
I
problem.
appreciate it. Did a wonderful job. I think Tabitha is one of our best presenters when we start talking about voting and what all is entailed. I've actually worked at the election office, and she's been my boss, and she was a great boss, but I also learned a lot too. And so I would advise you, if you have any questions about how the election process works at the poll, please be a poll worker. I was a poll worker. I slacked off for a couple of years, but I got my application to do that in the mail, and I have signed it. I'm going to hand it to her today, so I will be working at the polls this year. Our next speaker, I think we've all been waiting to hear from. Senator Wagle has been our champion in Topeka. I don't think anybody can dispute that. This has been a tough year from beginning to end. There has been a lot of controversy. There have been issues come up this year that have never come up before. And I hope it's a long time until they do again. But she's done a wonderful job. She's had to work from home. It's just been very, very difficult. But I think she's going to explain to us some things about reopening Kansas, how that has happened, why some of it's happened, can we change anything? Also about what's going to happen. Are the legislators going to go back to work? Are they not going to go back to work? And that's really a misnomer because they're working every day anyway from home. So without any further ado, Senator Wagle.
Thank you, Alta. Thank you for the invitation to address Republican women. I want to thank the ladies who are tuned in. Thank you for all your volunteerism. Thank you for helping Republican candidates who support limited government and individual liberties. We're in a very difficult time right now in this COVID crisis. Things have turned upside down, and we have a lot of unique needs right now to keep our economy running, and I'd like to talk about it. I'm not only your Kansas Senate President in Topeka, I'm also a candidate for the U.S. Senate, but right now I'm very focused on state issues. As we try to end the 2020 session, the senators and I wanted to come back to resolve issues, to debate bills, especially those relating to the COVID crisis that we're experiencing right now. The House overruled us. We're only coming back for one day. So I've called my committees back to do some extra work. We have some bills that we think are absolutely critical that need to be passed. The first thing we need to do is make sure that this property tax payment that's due on Monday, that if it's not paid, we have a lot of businesses that are shut down. They don't have the ability to make that payment this Monday. We want to make sure that they are not fined with penalties and interest if they make that payment late. There's a lot of concerns we have right now about the governor's emergency orders. In many instances, she is violating statutes. For instance, she says you can buy alcohol out of your car. That violates a statute. She says a notary can sign a document over the internet. That violates statute. She has intervened in the contract between a renter and a landlord and said that the renters don't have to pay their bills. So the Attorney General and I have been in communication. We're very concerned about her excessive authority that she has used recently that actually violates our laws. So she needs to be reined in. What I'm most concerned about and what is most important for everyone to hear right now is that yesterday the governor in her press conference actually said that she's considering not opening up for phase 2 on the 18th, as she's officially said earlier. Let me tell you something. I have calls from business owners all over the state, from the nail salons, from the hairdressers, from the martial arts centers, from the small theaters, from the gyms. I have calls from businesses who are very disappointed that they can't be open now. They want to respect social distancing. They had sanitized their facilities. They were ready to open. They were ready to open with all the other businesses when she said when she made her last declaration. And they are losing money. The most important thing we have to do as a legislature, as elected leaders right now, is to make sure that this recession that we're in, that this downturn, that all the unemployment that's happened in the last few weeks, even new notices that were given yesterday, we have to put people back to work. We have to make sure this recession doesn't become a long-term depression. And the only way to do that is to open Kansas safely. The only way to open Kansas safely is to respect social distancing and go into extra efforts to sanitize facilities. I called for the governor to open all businesses. She shouldn't have been discriminatory. She should have allowed businesses to open that respected social distancing, that sanitized their facilities, and that made sure everyone that was protected that came in their business. Instead, this governor has been discriminatory. I can tell you, yesterday in McPherson, Kansas, a barber was given an arrest warrant for trying to open up his business and to save his facility and find a way to pay his bills. Even though Kansas businesses have been shut down, they still have to pay their utility bills. Some of them are even still paying their employees, even though they aren't working. We are in a crisis, and for this governor to pass discriminatory emergency orders hurts our path back to a free economy and back to our path back to what do I want to say? What do I want to call it? Prosperity. Certainly we were having the strongest growth curve under Trump when this all happened. It's very disconcerting that all of a sudden, through no fault of our own, we are shut down. So what I want to do when the legislature comes back on the 21st is I'm going to ask my colleagues to work with me to rein in this governor's emergency powers. She absolutely needs to be reined in. Democrats prefer to be very powerful and oppressive and tell us what to do. We are an entrepreneurial community, and what I would like to do, we don't have an organization representing all the nail salons across Kansas. We don't have an organization representing our hairdressers or our gyms. So if you know of someone who wants to go back to work, who's willing to accept social distancing and make sure their facility is sanitized and make sure that they take care of their patrons, I would ask them to email me at Susan Wagle at senate.ks.gov. Susan Wagle, it's Susan.Wagle at senate.ks.gov. Right now, every day, we are walking over to the governor's office, numerous complaints from people who are filing for unemployment and can't get through in the system. So we take that information to the governor's office and we say, you've got to solve these problems. Now, I want the governor to hear from businesses who aren't open, who want to reopen, and we need a loud voice. We need to tell this governor she has to allow phase 2 opening. This is Kansas. This is not New York. We are a rural state. We want to go back to work, and we shouldn't have a policy that allows some businesses to open and others to stay closed. All of us need to go back to work safely. We need to get this economy rolling again. So please email Susan.Wagle at senate.ks.gov. Send me your information. I will walk it straight over to the governor's office. We need to be heard. The restaurants have an association, aviation has an association, bankers, all other interest groups have associations, and those who are left out of being open for business don't seem to have a statewide association to be their voice. So I'd be happy for you to email me, and I will take your concerns to the governor. Meanwhile, as we come back into session, as the legislature reconvenes on the 21st, the Senate will be working on reining in this governor's executive orders. We want to make sure that we can open up Kansas safely, that we can get people back to work, that we can get the economy rolling. Just last month, state receipts, income tax, sales tax, all the money that we receive from taxation was down 41% in 1 month. And so what I see coming around, if we can't get people back to work, is a huge tax increase to pay the bills. So we all need to be one voice. We need to say, Governor, let us open up safely. That is very, very important to our economy. I was on the phone with Western Kansas workers, with people who own small businesses who just want to reopen safely. It's very important that we all get involved in this movement. It's very important before the legislature goes back on the 21st that you call your legislators, that you call the governor and say, open Kansas safely, open it now, do not delay. Other than that, I am a candidate for the U.S. Senate. We have 8 people in that seat to replace Pat Roberts. I am the proven conservative. I'm pro-life, and I take a stand for the little people who need a voice in government. So I'd love to have your support.
All right. We do have a few questions for you. One of the questions has been, if we have to go through the shutdown again because the COVID returns in the fall, as some have predicted that it will, what assurances do we have as Kansans that this is going to be handled differently and that we don't again go through a great economic crisis? Or can that be assured to us?
That's a great question. Right now, our emergency statutes that are in Kansas books address a short-term crisis, like a tornado, like a flood, like a fire, like a wildfire. We never anticipated a long-term virus pandemic. That's why the legislature has to address emergency authority when we go back on the 21st to make sure that we don't go through unnecessary shutdowns, to make sure we keep all Kansas safe, to make sure to the extent that we can that we leave businesses open. People need to be able to travel. Our hotels and motels are closed. Restaurants are still closed everywhere. We have to rein in this governor. There needs to be a balance of power. Our emergency authority right now, because she took us to court, there's no check on her emergency powers. We were working with her on trying to keep Kansas safe, and then our governor came out with an order that shut down the churches. We had some attorneys say, no, that's in violation of your constitutional right to worship. And the churches that wanted to be open, they wanted to respect safety distancing. They wanted to make sure their parishioners stayed healthy. And so we had to take her to court. And of course, we won that lawsuit. But we need to have a check on this governor's powers, her emergency authority, and that can only be done through a statute when we go back on the 21st. It's very important that Republicans unite. We have a Democrat governor. We have to have the ability to give her a strong message that she can't be the sole authority in a crisis, that we need a balance of power. We need checks and balances on her authority. We need to be working together to open Kansas safely.
Yes. Another question. So there's been talk of going to half-day or alternate school days in the fall. Have you heard anything about that, and how can we make sure it doesn't happen?
I think that's silly. We've already learned that the COVID crisis can be deadly to the elderly. We believe in protecting the elderly. We've asked them not to go out. If they live in their homes, have their kids shop for them. The children, if they get COVID, it's not deadly like it is for an elderly person. We need to reopen our schools. In some of the larger cities, we have a situation where kids have one-parent homes. They are at risk. We have parents who are alcoholics, parents who are drugs, and we have no oversight of these children. We don't know if they're being fed right now. We don't know if they're safe. The schools are a check on parents that are dysfunctional. We need to put kids back in school. They need the socialization. The COVID crisis to a child is not deadly like it is to the elderly. We need to, and let me say one thing. Governor Kelly was the first governor in the nation to close schools for the rest of the year. And here we are in the Midwest. We're not a high population state, and she shut down our schools. And kids all over Kansas, they want socialization, they want to learn. There's no accountability for learning what they should have at this grade level. We've got to open up the schools.
All right, we have time for one more question, and this one says, does the governor have the legal authority to close businesses under the emergency period, or did she only have the authority through May 1st?
We're looking into that. There's a lot of legal challenges going on right now. There's two concerns about that. Some attorneys think that she was legal, some think she wasn't. So we need to fix the problem when we go back on the 21st as a legislature. We need to fix emergency powers through a statute that is predictable, that isn't in question in a courtroom, and we need to rein her in, and we need to make sure she opens up for phase 2 of opening Kansas safely.
All right, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here very, very much. Thank you. That was wonderful. I know we have heard a lot of things on the news and that, but it's really refreshing to be able to hear from Senator Wagle what has happened and what's going on and what the plans are. Now, what I've been waiting for, as I'm sure you have, is to also hear about what's happening at the legislature in Kansas. Our representatives, our senators have not been there on active duty, even though they have been working from home. I hear from so many of them every day about what they're doing. So we have Representative Emil Bergquist here. He is from District 91. He has been there for 3 sessions. He's certainly very capable to answer your questions and give us information about what's going to happen when the legislators go back, why didn't they go back earlier, and what we can or cannot expect them to be able to accomplish in this one day that they're going to be back. Representative Bergquist.
Thank you. Well,
It's good to be here. We want to thank the Republican women for the invite for us to be here, for the senator and myself. And we are certainly grateful that you all are ready to be in the battle for the election come fall. And when we went into the legislature this year in January, none of us had the slightest notion that we would be dealing with a pandemic. But we had the same responsibility that we finished with in March, and that was a primary responsibility to provide a budget for the state. There were many pieces of legislation that because of what happened in the pandemic and the shutdown, that have been put aside because of the inability for us to meet as we did before. We are ready to get back to work and finish January or May the 21st. We'll be back for one day, and what the Senate and the House will come back both that same day. On the ensuing days before that May the 21st date, we will be meeting in committees, Judiciary Committee, the House Commerce Committee, the Appropriations Committee, and Taxation. Will be meeting in order to provide background and advance preparations for the legislature to take action, to provide guidelines, to provide advisement, to provide structure, to provide analysis of what's going on and what might be going on for the rest of the year. After May the 21st, we'll be coming back in January, or whoever gets elected will be coming back in January. It is our primary responsibility that remains, and that is to provide safe guidelines and advisement to the executive branch to follow the state statute and to provide safety for the people of the state of Kansas. We, as representatives, and I'm sure as senators as well, have received scores and scores of communications of frustration and of complaint and anger and uncertainty about what's going on and how it's going to affect their jobs, how it's going to affect their schooling, how it's going to affect their mothers and grandmothers in the nursing homes. So many people have lost family members in the past months here in the state of Kansas, as well as in the large states like New York and New Jersey. But we're dealing with the state of Kansas. We're dealing with the people that we serve. And so I'm on the Judiciary Committee, and as we go back during the week before May the 21st, we will be addressing issues of licensure and making sure that the guidelines are there for healthcare workers and for first responders to be able to take their actions as they need to do their job safely for the people. And during the ensuing time, we've allowed, the governor has allowed licensure flexibility for healthcare workers that we've been looking at in Health and Human Services and in Judiciary and other committees towards nurses having more practice authority in order to provide enough health care for the people during this crisis. I think it's really important, and I've always believed that temporary and targeted are the most important issues when it comes to dealing with a crisis. When I was mayor, we had disasters and financial issues that came up, and we tried the same thing that we're trying here in the House and hopefully in the Senate as well, to be able to get a targeted response to problems so that after the crisis we can maybe have some new insight, but bring things back to normal rather than this level of spending that's really unsustainable. We're glad that there's help coming from the federal level. That's another thing that the House committees will be meeting on the week before the 21st to discuss how we believe that those funds could and should be spent in the following months, and we'll make those recommendations, I'm sure, as a legislative body as a whole, to the governor and the executive branch. Appropriations, Commerce is simply going to be looking at unemployment, the unemployment system that we have that's apparently been very difficult for people to deal with in the last couple of months as they've applied for unemployment. They've had great difficulty in getting it, and some of them still don't have it today. There's so many questions to be answered, and we'd like to be able to direct them after we're gone. We'd like to then be successfully directed to the executive branch and to the unemployment agency of the state to be able to get their questions answered. Our primary goal, and was before this pandemic happened, is to see people thrive and to see people excel in their businesses and excel in their career choices. And that goes for education. We want the education system to be wide open and in a way that's safe. So the creative minds of educated people that are instructing in our establishments are certainly working towards good answers for that issue as well. I will be only going back for judiciary, and others will be going back in the week previous to the 21st. We will work together. We have a majority in the House and in the Senate as Republicans, and we hope together that we will accomplish great things in that one day to answer the questions that people have, and to also put the appropriate verbal controls on the executive branch so that they will be at least answerable to the people. That's what you expect, and that's what we will strive for. Budgets are in government are always expected to be a top mark for spending, and then you spend the rest of the year trying not to spend that money, trying to not spend it all. In this case, we have an extraordinary situation where at least extra monies are coming in from the federal government on a temporary basis. So the plan is to try to help guide those expenditures towards the people so that they can best benefit from the help that's being given. And foremost is to help people get back to work at the very earliest they can, as they choose to, so that we can be a thriving economy and not just surviving economy. And I'd be happy to take questions.
All right. We have a lot of questions piling up here, and most of them have to do with what do you anticipate the additional taxes will be? How much are we going to have to raise taxes, and on which products will those taxes be applied to help us get out of this deficit? Will people start going across state lines to buy groceries and other kinds of things?
We have passed the budget in the end of March that is the governor's budget. Regardless of the fact that there was extenuating circumstances that have happened since then, we don't have the ability to raise taxes after having passed the budget. We are bound by the budget that's been then passed. So it's now the governor's responsibility to work within that budget and to make adjustments accordingly. A budget is the dollar amount rather than the expenditure itself. And she, as other governors have throughout our history, have had to make decisions on how that money gets spent, as there are shortages and excesses, if there really was excesses. So you're not going to, I don't believe you'll see any kind of tax increase or increase of tax burden What we are going to try to do is try to get relief for you even at the county level, so that penalties and deadlines won't be an issue for people. And we're going to try to get a statewide answer so that counties will be able to have the relief of being able to say we're going to help you with a time delay anyway. So I don't believe there's going to be. I'm pretty sure there's not going to be any ability to have a raise in taxes, but there will be in the coming year. We'll only know when January gets here exactly how much of a deficit there is and what needs we're going to have. So that's the short answer.
All right. We also have a question that says if the governor has to make adjustments in the budget and shift money around, is there any way to control or to guide her in where she should take that money, or are some accounts just doomed to be wrong?
The guidance will come from the Senate and the House, as it will, in order to provide the guidance for what we believe the money how they should be directed, especially the federal dollars coming in, in order to give better guidance for appropriate actions. So she has the power of the budget after we've provided that to her, but we also have the influence of analyzing what the funds are coming from the feds, and also to be able to provide insight and requested guidance for those expenses, so that they're appropriately helping to get the state going.
All right, I think we have time for two more questions.
Okay.
One is back again about education funding. Is there an anticipated cut to education funding that you know of?
I don't know of any anticipated cut to education funding. Some of that money has probably been preserved by not having facilities operating during this time, and hopefully individual school districts of well over 200 school districts will be saving their funds for operations for the coming year, and hopefully they have that responsibility individually to take the financing that the state provides and then simply to do the very best with it they can.
All right, we have one last question here, and it's about the unemployment program. Some people want to know, if their jobs do not return, will unemployment be extended past the date that they have now?
The federal $600, we don't know. The state dollars, that would have to be a decision made outside of what personally exactly now is statutory. So the governor's decision on whether that extends would be, and hopefully then she would go to the LCC, the Legislative Coordinating Council. We have the privilege of having 5 Republican leaders and 2 Democrat leaders leading in the LCC, and hopefully they'll still have a role in this next year to help the guidance.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being here today. We know
Thank you.
how much it is. I just love that. Well, we certainly got an earful there from all the questions and the information that Representative Bergquist gave us. I'm just very excited that we were able to hear from both the Senate side and the House side about what's going on. We do have some late breaking news that has just come in, and I think Senator Wagle wants to have the mic again just for a quick moment before we end the program. Senator Wagle.
Thank you, Alta. I have just been notified about some very sad news. We have a barber in McPherson, in the city of McPherson, who was arrested this morning. He has 2 little children. He has a family. I'll move this up towards the camera. I'll let you hold that. I'll come back and talk. Luke Wagle was arrested this morning. He opened up his barber shop yesterday. He needs to feed his family. I don't know if he's made bail yet, but these discriminatory orders from Governor Kelly are very harmful to families all across Kansas. So I'm going to ask everyone to call the governor's office. It should be open on Monday, and express concern about her discriminatory emergency orders that forces some people to stay at home and not earn a living. We need to open up Kansas safely with social distancing, all businesses. Anybody who wants to feed their family, anyone who wants to work, respecting sanitary conditions and social distancing should be allowed to work in Kansas. No young gentleman who's trying to feed his family should ever be arrested. So please get involved. His name is Luke Wagle. He was arrested this morning for opening up his barbershop. So this is serious, and please, Kansans, hear our concerns and call the governor.
All right, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Late breaking news right here. You heard it first on Republican Women United Facebook Live. For those of you who are going to call the governor, and we certainly encourage you to do that, the phone number is 785-296-3232. All right, so call Governor Kelly. Tell her what you think about this. This concludes our program for this month. We are so excited that you turned in. Remember, next month, our meeting will be live here in the building, and we will also have it on Facebook, because we do know that we have some of our viewers and some of our members that are still not going to be able to get out into large groups. So come at 9:30 for our social hour. We will gavel in at 10. We will be limited to the number of people that can be in the room, so get here early. I know a lot of you have been asking if Patty's going to be here with her coffee and her special breakfast, and she will be. So we look forward to that. I want to thank all of our speakers today. We just appreciate so much you supporting us. So if there is no other business, we're going to gavel out, and this will end the Republican Women United's meeting for May. Thank you.